How hard did you push it? Till I black out? Yes. Numerous times, yes.
What's happening, Municipals? This is Ashton and three friends. Before we get started, I want to formally apologize that we did not have a podcast last week. Technically, we did. I recorded a over 90-minute podcast with JD. He was here at my house. We had a wonderful taco dinner, and I think I've come around on the fact that the mute button was on the microphone. So Pax went to edit it. There was nothing there. So yeah, we've never missed we've never missed a podcast, but that's going to go as the first one. Maybe it just means we should not be recording these live, but Big is going to get JD on the horn, and that is going to be about JD's recent trip to Scotland, where he played the old course with his dad and Katie. A bunch of great stories there that'll come later on. But for tonight, the four-man weave, I think everybody, Alex has been here before to talk about Del Monte. Hussey's been here probably too much, if we're being honest. And Dominic, it'll be his first time, so we'll kind of start with him. But we're going to talk about Spyglass Hill. We got to play there. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Duke's Club, recently, and it's a place that's worth talking to. So we'll start off with Dom. Dom, we have first-time guests. We always like to be like, tell us about yourself, tell us about your golf game, tell us what you're trying to do. But yeah, man, thank you for joining. What a lovely backdrop you've got for all you video people.
Thank you. It took me a couple minutes to make sure I had everything just right. I was like, I know your background is very exquisite, so I had to not match it, but I had to go with the vibe a little bit. Thank you for having me. My golf game, I really don't want to talk about that at the moment. I can talk about how long I've been playing golf, I guess. I started really in high school, and it's a family game for me. And my dad's a really good player, and I was into basketball, and golf just kind of came up one summer, as it always does. You get addicted really quick, and then next thing you know, I was playing on the high school golf team and ended up playing in college, and had one of those weird, hey, I love golf, hey, I hate golf. And then next thing you know, I'm here in California and playing all these terrific courses in the Bay Area. We're very spoiled out here, obviously. And then I get to meet all my new friends that I now play golf with. And I'm just very grateful for the journey that golf has taken me on, and having these new experiences and bringing me to the first podcast I've ever been on in my life. So just very excited to talk golf, but thank you for having me.
Yeah. And Dom, where, just people know, where do you live? What do you do for work? Just to kind of take you outside of just your golf game. Also give people your handicap if they have no concept of how good or bad you are.
I'm currently a 5 handicap flat. We've gone up a little bit this summer, so we got some work to do. Spyglass did not help with that at all. But I work for a company called Exos, and we are the provider of Google's global corporate wellness program. So my job is to basically run all the fitness facilities at Google's corporate headquarters in Mountain View with a team of my own, personal trainers, group exercise instructors, full-time, we call them performance coaches, that all the Google employees have access to. So it's a really gratifying job to be able to help people get healthier, be happier, reduce their stress. And then I actually come into contact with a lot of golfers too. So I have my Titleist Performance Institute certification. So I do work with golfers to help them get in shape, come back from injury, stuff like that. So I try and bring all these things together, on the side here with golf as well.
Wonderful. Cool. Well, I said cool. Cool. Next, probably should have led with this. Alex, congratulations on getting married, my friend. That happened, I think, like right after our trip. So congratulations. Welcome back on the podcast. And you've not played much golf since then, but other priorities have recently taken, which is we saw the pictures of you and your lovely wife. They look looked like a delightful time.
Yeah, everybody wants to see them too. It feels weird being the center of attention for once. So thanks, Huss. But yeah, the clubs are a little dusty. Not a big deal. hopefully once we get to the end of August, they'll start to get some dust off of them, and get ready to get back into it. So it's a combination of both of personal and professional busyness, which is always fun.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, congratulations. I don't know. You're always trying to make yourself the center of attention, so I don't know what you're talking about. And Mr. Chris Hussey, how are you going? It's been, I guess for you, it's been a long time since you've been on here. It's only been a couple months, but how are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, thanks for not inviting me on the podcast, Ashton. I really appreciate it so much. Love you.
Let's talk about how we shot 85 at a 4-ball event. Everyone really is clamoring for more of that.
Yeah, terrible golf equals lots of views, apparently. Not. Yeah, I'm doing well. Getting ready for harvest season to make a ton of wine, or multiple tons of wine, should I say. But I wanted to congratulate Alex, and also Dom, I wanted to apologize to you for thinking that you were from Redding, California. That was very embarrassing, that I just assumed someone who was in California was from California. So I apologize. I still don't know exactly where you're from, but it's some city called Redding, and I know it's not the one north of here.
I love that. I did forget about that. Gosh, that was a good laugh. Thank you very much. I really had it going too, because whatever I was talking about, there's something must have been in both cities, and so for 30 seconds we were on to something, but then it just went sideways.
Sure, I was really intrigued by the MAGA takeover of the Redding City Council in Northern California, but this is not a politics podcast, so I will shut up.
No, and then we started talking. I think you're from Reading, Pennsylvania, which is one of the railroads on the Monopoly board, right, Dom?
That is true. Yeah, one of the top conversational topics whenever I talk about that. You know, it's an hour west of Philadelphia. You can find me on the Monopoly board. We make good, pretzels. I think Tron's actually mentioned them before. He couldn't find the pretzels that come from my hometown. But yeah, that's not much else is going on over there.
Yeah, you gotta have that thing. It's like for me, it's always like I say Atlanta, and they're like, hot Atlanta, and it's like, I mean, literally, it hasn't been hot Atlanta since before I was born. It does get hot, but everybody's got.
Did you know that Coca-Cola is from Atlanta?
I did. Shout out
you
Mr.
know that?
Poosh. Shout out Mr. Poosh. Had myself a DC today. Yeah, that's one of the stupidest no laying up bits. But shout out to you, Bean. Every time Bean and I have a Diet Coke, we send a picture to each other, and it's no context, just one of the stupidest things we do. But it makes me happy. Before we dive in, Huss, real quick, since the last time you've been on, real quick, you shot under par on at a big boy golf course. You want to give people a little bit about that before we dive into Spy?
Yeah, I went to
cool
Streamsong. I was fortunate to for work to go out to Tampa, Florida, and I got to play Cabot Citrus Farms, which was a cool course that Mike Kaiser, I guess, has taken over. It used to be another golf course, and they've redone it and kind of made it a little more, quote unquote, natural and much more firm. And it was really, really great golf course. And then the next day I went and played Streamsong Black. And I played really well and shot 72 on a par 73. And it's my second time ever breaking par. And I'll never forget being on that, the 18th hole, par 5. And there's the second shot. I had the ability to go for it in 2. And I said, and there's a crazy ravine below right in front of the green. And I was like, you know what? I'm here to try and break par, so I'm going to go for it. And I hit that beautiful hybrid that Jack Lopez, producer Jack, has let me borrow for a very long time. And I put it on the green and 3-putted for par. So, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. You're welcome. Don't worry, Jack's listening going, don't worry, man, I got 4 more on back order. It's all good, man. The face is so hot, man. It's all good. Oh, God. Love you, Jack. But to get to the topic, Alex, why don't you kind of start us off? Because you've played Spy several times. It was the 3. It was me, Dominic, and Hussey's first time. But why don't you kind of start us off a little bit about Spyglass, your experience. You can kind of kick off the conversation here.
Sure. So Spy is part of the Pebble Beach property. They are probably the second most popular course in the Pebble Beach Resort, next to Pebble itself. It's arguably, you could say, at certain points it's more challenging than Pebble just because of the difficulty of the course and the layout. I believe it's longer from the tips than it is than Pebble is, and it was kind of one of those things where we all wanted to get together and try and play it, and thankfully we had Duke's Club, and that helped just overall lower the cost and lower the barrier for everybody. Spy, I believe, has not hosted a major tournament itself, but it was, I can't remember, Ashton, you're going to have to, I think, help me here, is who the course architects are for Spy, and what they've done. I know that they kind of split with Pebble the Pro-Am. They split their tournament there with certain groups playing Pebble and then certain groups playing Spyglass. I had to look it up. RTJ was senior was the architect for Spyglass, and I think that there was a lot of good and fun leading up to this entirety. We did do Poppy Hills the day before to kind of get us warmed up, and we got to play. Everybody was surprised because we played the tips from Poppy, which was equivalent to playing one up from Spy, and we all were saying at Poppy how different the golf course played from the tips. Good example was hole 2, where you're hitting all the way from the back in a different tee box from behind the cart path, and you just see that long par 3 shot and just how different it felt from back there in comparison to playing like one up or playing from the whites at Poppy. I think Spy overall, it's overall a difficult course, and for this trip we unfortunately did not get blessed with good weather. We were unfortunate and had to play a very early tee time due to availability at Spy. It is tough to get on at some points, and we were blessed with just the fog of Monterey. There was way too much fog where you couldn't even see probably at like 150 yards into the course. So we did not get the pretty views of the ocean when we did the first hole, which is a starting par 5, fairly long. It is gettable, but it's not easy gettable. It's fairly narrow landing area, trees along both the left and the right hand side. Left side is more dead than the right hand side. Right hand side has a fairway. It's the 7th fairway. No. Yeah, it is the 7th fairway next to it on the right hand side. And the green has a very large bunker complex guarding it, and then rough probably about 40 yards before you hit the green. And this was my fourth time playing Spyglass, but the first time as a group, which was wonderful. Second time with a group actually, and it's so much better playing with a group than it is playing by yourself. You all are feeling how difficult that course is from the layout. Greens are small, like they are with all the Pebble Beach properties, and then the fairways are a little bit more forgiving than some of the other courses out there, and a couple of better misses, I would say, on that course than if you're comparing it to like Spanish. And I can't speak on Pebble, but definitely some better misses than Del Monte, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. That was a really good summary. Maybe we can do is Hussey and Dominic and Ike in a little bit. We can just kind of give some high level, like our thoughts, like Alex did. And then I think the format we'll do is we all have been kind of noodling on, kind of like I did for the Bandon pod previously, maybe like a take from each of us or just kind of something we want to say. And then we'll do a little bit more like specific about the course, favorite hole, worst hole, kind of some stuff for people who may not have played it before. But Huss, do you want to kind of just high level thoughts about Spy?
Yeah, I think it was unfortunate, as Alex mentioned, that we were completely fogged in for, I mean, in some ways it was kind of the entire round. But for the first, I think 6 or 7 holes, you couldn't see more than 150 yards, as Alex said. So, the first hole, I mean, we just really didn't see much of anything. Second hole, similarly, we didn't see much of anything. But you could tell you were by the sea. You could hear the ocean. You could hear the waves crashing. And golly, you could smell the bird poop and fish guts and everything rotting on the ocean. So you knew you were seaside, but unfortunately, like the third hole, which is that downhill par three, you just really, it's supposed to be the most amazing view on that entire golf course, and you didn't see anything. You couldn't even see the pin. I mean, we were fortunate that we splurged a little bit for a caddy, and the caddy was able to kind of give us a direction of where the green was. It was that thick. But overall, I feel that Spyglass, hands down, way better than Spanish Bay, obviously. And in some ways, much better than Poppy Hills. But I do think there's a few things about Spyglass that I think Poppy Hills kind of beats it out. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, I really enjoyed my time. And Alex, thank you for, extending that Dukes Club. And, it makes it a little bit more palatable in terms of the greens feed, because when we walked in there and one of the guys was like, all right, who's ready to drop $450? And thankfully, that was none of us. So, yeah, appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. And just to give people a little bit of context too, the caddy was his last minute decision as it gets. We were done at Poppy, and Dom and Huss are standing outside with that. Ashton's in the Poppy clubhouse. I think he's doing something, and Huss and Dom both say, "Oh, do we want to do a caddy tomorrow?" So get on the horn and make the call to the pro shop and say, "Hey, is there any chance that we can get a double for tomorrow morning at 6:40?" That's how early our tee time was, and they made it happen. And I'm going to transition before I kick Dom. I'm sorry, my hot take for this Spy and Poppy trip. Spyglass was made 10,000 times better because we had a caddy that day, even though he was a double caddy for just Dom and Huss, because they wanted that full experience. He was nice enough to extend things to Ashton and I, and he made the experience at Spyglass so much better.
Yeah, I agree. That you'll never have to worry about that with me. If you ever want to go one up, in terms of elevating your experience, just bring me along. I'll always be the bad influence to spend a little bit more money and splurge. So thank you, Nick, our caddy, also for saving the day. Apparently we weren't supposed to get him. We were lined up with somebody else, and he jumped in and apparently thought there were good vibes to be had. And there were. He had some antics. I don't think we'll be able to talk about them on this podcast, but he was definitely loving it, especially when Hussey was striping the ball down the fairway.
And he's a caddy, but also a professional race car driver. Check him out. Should we we can say his full name? I don't know.
Totally. We can send him the pod.
Dude, Nick Galante.
Same old business.
You got to look him up on YouTube. You can see him racing cars. It's awesome. But yeah, he is hands down the best caddy I've ever had. I've only had like 5, but he was incredible. He had a fanny pack. He was ready to go. And Ashton could probably talk to this more, but yeah, on the first tee, he really made us feel welcome and very happy that we got him.
Yeah, definitely. Dom, I want to get back to you. High level thoughts, whatever you want to say.
I think that my biggest takeaway, whenever you do research on Spy, and it's like, who likes Spy? Is it better than Pebble? I've never played Pebble, but it's always, I like Spy better, or Pebble's definitely way better. because of those internal, forest holes, like basically 75% of the course. So to be honest, I wasn't sure what to expect. I wasn't looking forward to playing Poppy Hills for 75% of the course and having the first 5 be the only ones that were like magnificent, if you will. I was pleasantly surprised, and I never even came across my mind that there was like a downside to hitting holes, 6 onward. So I really enjoyed the fact that you didn't dwell on, hey, the most fun I had was in the first hour. I thought it kept things going. There are a couple duds, there's a couple of par 4s out there that you kind of forget about, or we can talk about that later. Like 18 was not exactly number 1, but it certainly was a pleasant surprise that how well the course kind of flows, and you don't think about the fact that all the great things are when you first tee off.
Yeah, I think I'm going to piggyback a lot of that. I think that an important caveat for all of us, I've thought about this a lot. All of us living in California, I think that one thing that we have, this is not a problem, but I think it's important to call out. I think that we've all become desensitized to coastal golf a little bit. Like a good example that I talk about, or I think I've talked about this with you, Hussey, is like when people, like every year at the cookout, people are trying to like, should I play Sandpiper? Should I play Rustic Canyon? Like, what should I do? Like, I do not think that like Sandpiper is a good golf course. There's a couple of great holes, but Sandpiper absolutely rules because it's like on the water, and like, I've had some days with Hussey out there where like, I think we play like by ourselves. It's like 75 degrees. The sun is like glistening on the water, and it doesn't really matter that the golf course isn't great, right? And so I think that what's interesting, kind of you're saying, Dom, is you do your research, like everyone's like, even like we're joking, like, Thirst Bucket, Grant Horvath, like guys, first 5 holes better than Pebble. It's like, okay, like you're just looking at the ocean, right? Like, I don't actually think, hot take, like I don't think that a lot of like critical thought is being done about the actual like holes or like the architecture or like what that actually means. Like 3, for example, it's just like a downhill par 3, right? Like, I'm not trying to rip it, because let's be clear, Nick actually said, he's like, guys, I don't know where the flag is, I don't know the number, but he's like, based off of caddying here for 26 years, I want you guys to like aim it over this rock and hit it 155, which was great caddying because we had no idea what was going on. But like, I don't know that like, is 3 like one of the best par 3s ever played? I don't think so. Actually, I'd go so far as to say I've dumped all over Spanish on this pod. Yeah, I've dumped over Spanish in this pod. I would go so far as like 4 at Spanish is like a superior par 3. 16, 15 at Spanish is a better par 3. But you're looking at the ocean, right? But I think to finally get to the point, like what really amazed me is I've heard, people like, oh, the first 5 holes are great, and then it kind of really takes the foot off the gas. Like, you're right. I think like there's a whole like 18, and you kind of told us this ahead of time, Alex, but your take didn't influence us. It's like 18's just like driver wedge straight. Yeah, it's just like the inland holes were, if anything, more interesting. I think like 2 is a really interesting hole. Like, I'm not used to hitting 5-iron, 8-iron, like straight uphill. There's some really good holes early on. But also too, like there's some stuff like an awesome hole, but like 4 at the Bacon Strip, like let's be clear, the Bacon Strip is really cool and also like very gimmicky, right? So like, I think what a lot of people are indexing on is the ocean and seeing things they've never seen before, which is totally fine. But I think sometimes we conflate that with like good, right? Like, that doesn't mean it's good. And I'm not trying to like yuck your yum. If that's your thing, cool. But like, don't tell me that some of those like inland holes, like when I think about it, like, uphill long par 4s in the woods, that is not a hole that going into, I'd be like, wow, that like really resonated with me. But some of those holes were like probably some of the best holes we've played. And I think the fact that like Spy had such a high floor, like we can play the game of like worst hole, and I guess it might be 18. But like just so many good holes, and selfishly, as someone who likes to play like challenging, like hard golf courses that force you to lock in, you're going to need to do that for like 4.5 hours straight. So, yeah. And again, I'd love to go back, because I'm sure staring at the ocean for the first 5 holes is magical on a day like we saw on Instagram today. But I think just like the inland holes are really, really, really good. And like that I think is really great. And I think that if you don't like that, you're just someone who's like over-indexing on ocean and uniqueness as opposed to like, no, like really pay attention to like what this hole is asking you to do.
I think you're absolutely right, and that's where the fact that we didn't see the ocean can make us a little bit more critical and just really take the course for what it is. I think the par threes at Spyglass are okay. I honestly think the par threes at Spanish are better. I think the par threes at Poppy might even be better. But I actually quite like 18 for the personal reasons, in the sense that I was playing a very good round and I get onto the 18th tee box, and the entire day my driver was a tad squirrely, and it's a straightaway hole, and straightaway holes are kind of the hardest holes to play. And I get up there and I straight up, pull a driver, and luckily it hits a tree and stays in bounds because it was going out of bounds. It's a simple hole that really, if you're a bit nervous on the tee box, you actually will be even more anxious over the ball. Whereas some of the other holes, like 16, which is a crazy dogleg right, you have to hit a shot in a specific shape or else you're screwed. 18, it's kind of like you do what you want. And so I actually quite like 18. Most matches are done by 18, but ours was not. And it proved to be a little tricky for all of us, I think.
Yeah, it was almost helpful, excuse me, to have the fog because you couldn't see the trouble. So, when you're being told to just hit somewhere, I think it's actually a little more freeing. Like Bacon Strip, unfortunately, Ashton, you were a victim of this. Like you hit it in the wrong place. But for me, not knowing where to go and not knowing where the trouble was, like I just hit it right in the middle, went through the fairway a little bit. But and number two as well, like I don't know if I would have hit good shots had I been able to actually see panoramically what was around me, for not just the first 5 holes, but even something like 18 where you couldn't even see where your ball was going. So in a weird way, the fog, it elevated the experience a little bit too, because it was kind of spooky. It was really interesting, to go in there and see something that wasn't, out in front of you. But at the same time, I think it helped a little bit because you didn't know how much trouble you could get into.
Yeah.
I agree, and I think it's definitely fun because it's a different experience when you play it. Even for me, who's played it there multiple times, all the times that I've played it have not been foggy, so you get to see the coastline when you're first doing those 5 holes. And there is a little bit of sentiment, like you guys said, about coastal golf and how it does elevate the experience. I agree with you on that. I do think that there is, as Ashton is saying, the number 4 hole, it is gimmicky. It's a bacon strip. It's 5 yards wide fairway, or a 5 yard wide green with a 55 or a 45 yard long green complex, and the entirety of it flows. There's 2 rough side hills that just kind of flow to the green, and it's multiple tiered with it all kind of falling towards the back. And if you hit it in the middle or even the front of the green, it usually flows to the middle, and then if you hit in the middle of the green, it'll either stay there because it's a little bit more flat there, or it'll roll to the back. And that is one of the holes, though, where I do feel like if you were able to see the panoramic of it, you don't really see the green complex, and you don't know what you're walking into if you've never played there before. But I remember, Ashton, you were taking driver on that hole, and I thought to myself, this feels... Nick hasn't played with us, or Nick doesn't caddy for us on a regular basis, and when you're caddying for lower handicap golfers, you underestimate how far they hit the ball. And you only know that when you're, especially when you've been caddying for 26 years and you play with probably the wide range of golfers that he does, you probably see more golfers that are mid-handicap than you do low handicap, and they don't hit the ball very far. Nick said on the first hole he was playing with somebody from Texas, and he said, you're 150 yards out, what do you hit? 9 iron. And this guy was, a 18, 19 handicap, and he just went, yeah, right. So, that was definitely, in my opinion, the most ill-advised portion that Nick had, because he just doesn't know what to do. And I just remember seeing that the driver on that hole is rough because I knew that there was trouble behind it, and you can't see that because of the fog. Does that elevate the experience? Sure. You don't know what you're walking into, but I think that is kind of the one tough portion on those seaside holes where you really don't know where you're going is actually a detriment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you're really right, Alex. Like if that fourth hole was the 16th hole, our caddy Nick would have been like, Ashton, you cannot hit driver. Like he would have known.
It was even that. And it was even a little bit of that same situation that I did with Ashton on, I think is it 15, where it's a massive dogleg right hole that that's got a tree in the middle of the fairway, and if you hit it too far, you're out of bounds, and that's what happened with Ashton. He hit driver because Nick wasn't on the tee box with us, and he hit it too far and he hit it out of bounds. And just so people get a context also, Ashton's driver was the hottest club that day. It was literally on fire. He missed 0 spots. He only missed probably like 2 fairways because of wrong direction. So
and he shot 84.
It was amazing to watch.
Ready for the corn ferry tour, baby.
I mean, you're right. On that 16th hole, if Ashton had known that was a dog leg right, which, Ashton, you did not know that whole dog leg right.
I would have got there and I was like, I wish I had my 3-wood so bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Right now. This is not the right club.
It's the 3-wood hole, for sure.
Yeah.
So, it elevates, the caddy elevated the experience, but, he was also kind of taking a shortcut by just giving us driver and saying, hit it to where I'm at in the middle of the fair or in the side of the fairway. And it was like, that just wasn't.
Well, it was also just bad luck because we had got breakfast sandwiches on the 7th hole and the woman's card reader wasn't ready. So I had to pay for the sandwiches. So I just kind of ran ahead. Also, the breakfast sandwiches are incredible. You should get one. It was just like a culmination of factors, but it's all good. It's just next time I'm definitely not going to hit driver. And also too, to be fair to Nick, my driver on your point, I hit my driver amazing that whole trip. On number 1, I hit a dead snap hook and then I hit a huge block left. And so I hadn't given him a driver that was because number 2 we hit 5 iron, number 3 you hit 8 iron, right? So yeah, but to your point, I think if the bacon strip hole was 16 or something, that would be great. But we'll talk about favorite holes. But 17, I'm still thinking about 17. Well, why don't we go around to make it more formal? Take opinion, one from everybody, just something that's been on your mind, something that it doesn't have to be hot or divisive, Sharp Park sucks. Sorry, I'm just driving the car directly into the ditch. Just something that you want to say. Alex, want to go first?
Sure. I think that Spyglass, without playing Pebble, but seeing a lot of rounds at Pebble just throughout the entirety of its history, I'd say that Spyglass is a much more memorable golf course than Pebble will ever will be. Even if I play it, I think that overall Spyglass's holes are better. I think that it's a more challenging course, likely, than Pebble will be when I play it. But I'm more in favor of Spyglass than Pebble Beach.
Okay. Anybody have a comment, or you want to move along? I don't know. That's a hot take. I don't know.
I can't say anything. I haven't played Pebble. I mean, it seems to be though that, again, when I was reading things on the internet, whether it's Reddit or golf forums or actual written articles about the place, it's really 50-50. It's you either think Pebble is better than Spy, or you think Spy is better than Pebble. I think it's just beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But someday, hopefully, I can work on that comparison and make one myself.
I think we'll need to play Pebble Beach in the fog to really discount the ocean, right? I mean, I think about it, and I've walked Pebble at the U.S. Women's Open with Ashton, and I feel like I don't know. I feel like you can probably miss left most days, maybe except for that, what is that, that third or second hole where it's that dogleg left. Everything else is kind of dogleg rights, the whole entire property at Pebble. I could be wrong because I've never played there, but at Spyglass, there were so many holes that you either had to hit a draw or a fade off the tee, like 16. If you did not hit a fade, you were screwed. And I kind of enjoy that because it forces you to do something. Whereas I feel like, yeah, it's really hard for me to talk about comparing it to Pebble, unfortunately, having not played it. But I do think that Spyglass to me seems like the harder golf course because it does require you to hit different shots. Like the 2 par 3s on the back, you either hit a draw or you hit a fade on, one or the other. Because of where they have the water positioned, which to me, I didn't really enjoy those par 3s because they were just very one-dimensional. There was only one way to play them. But yeah, I think Spyglass is a harder test of golf. It requires you to hit specific shots. And maybe Pebble is a bit more figured out type of thing, and you can play it in multiple different ways. I don't know. It's too early for me to really tell.
It feels like to me
you're definitely right because
this is right.
Yes.
Because like we walked it, so again having this conversation, of course you haven't played, is tough. But I think to me it's how it feels based off walking it. I think that the highs are going to be higher at Pebble. I think the lows are going to be lower, but I think Spy is probably more consistent, right? Because like for me, I think like the golf course 8, 9, 10, like Hussey knows, like probably too much. So like 11, I think like the par 5 at Pebble, that hole sucks. Like that's a terrible golf hole. It's just a crescent moon with houses and OB right. Like no, thank you. Like 10, like 11, 12, 13. I think it's like 14. It just feels like it's like it's what you see. I think when you pull into Pebble, it just looks like it's like a field, right? And then there's houses and like a field. There's nothing, or 16, I think, because it's right before. But then it's like you play 17. Hussey and I sat at the U.S. Women's Open and watched the green complex at 16 or 17. That hole is amazing. Like we had such a more of a reverence for that hole, watching the women navigate that, like chipping from different parts of the green, and of course like 18, right? So it feels to me like the holes that like really bang, right? Like 6, 7, 8, 17, 18, like maybe some, Captain Obvious, some of the best golf holes in the world, right? There's nothing at Spyglass that's like, this is one of the best golf holes in the world. But also Spyglass doesn't have a hole I get up on and I'm like, okay, it's a crescent moon, par 5 with houses on the right? So maybe it's like the higher ceiling, lower floor, and then like Spy is just like an all-around more complete golf course. Just armchair quarterback, and that's how it feels to me.
But you're not taking into account the fog factor. Like, is 7 that great of a hole at Pebble Beach if you can't see the ocean, if it's not on the ocean?
Yeah, that's
I don't know.
Yeah. Or 8, right?
But 6 is a great hole, and 8 is a great hole, regardless of if you're on the ocean or not. So, I don't know. Weird thoughts.
Dominic, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say I agree because Spyglass was pretty much made to be a championship golf course in that it was made to be difficult. And the architect is notorious for making difficult golf courses, and it was built, 40 years after Pebble. So Pebble has that obviously very classic short course. You can pretty much get to it, on a good day. Like you'll probably have a better day if you were to go there on vacation and play all the golf courses. Like you probably could shoot 78 at Pebble if you're having a good day, where if you step up to Spyglass, you might get your butt kicked and you might not have a good time, especially if the greens are rolling, which we didn't actually experience. So the way that they, come across could be determined by how difficult one is playing on one or the other. But I think Spyglass was made to be difficult, and I think that can change your experience. So whoever steps up and has a good day or a bad day, like someone could hate it in that sense, right? Because they could really have some trouble.
Yeah. Huss, what's your take?
I feel like I burned all of mine. Shit.
Well, I mean, we're doing a
18.
good job of making this conversational, so.
Yeah, I feel like maybe the par threes aren't that great at Spyglass. I mean, they're kind of picturesque with, the
Ish.
bright blue ponds or whatever, the weird colored ponds. But
Mouthwash.
yeah, mouthwash ponds. Yeah. I mean, the two on the front, I mean, maybe five I actually liked because that green is kind of crazy, that fifth hole. But three was not great, and the two on the back, they're kind of mirror opposites of each other. One is a little shorter. I mean, they just kind of don't do anything for me. So I don't think the par threes are that great at Spy, but the par fives I think are really tough. Yeah, really, really good. So yeah, that's kind of my opinion on that.
Yeah. Dom, what's your take?
That was mine. So going right off of the par fives, I segmented into par threes, par fours, par fives. I think if I had to rank the groups, it would be par fives were my favorite section of golf holes. I think the par fours were solidly in the middle. There were some really good ones, and then there were a few that were like you said, just long uphill par fours that could be transposed on any other golf course. And the par threes are great, but there wasn't anything that really caught my attention, even though you have ponds and you have downhill shots. Like it's creative, but it felt a little like they tried too hard to make the par threes what they are. I guess that there was nothing natural about any of them except for number 3. But I thought the par fives were thoughtful. They made you hit different shots on all of them. They weren't gettable by any means. Like number 1 is a beast, but my favorite was number 14, I think.
Is that the one where Huss hit the hybrid in?
Do I have? Yeah, and so I think if you hit a good drive and you have to think about that, but it's still 210 yards, but there's obviously that pond on the right, I think that's great. Like it's not 240 and you're forcing it and you're just like, what the heck, I'll go for it. But it also wasn't too short. I think it was a really good test. And a lot of this also goes back to number 1 was my favorite hole, I think. I don't want to get too far ahead, but I think it has a perfect structure to it. And I think all of that said, the par fives were what stick out in my memory as to what I enjoyed the most throughout the round.
Yeah. I guess for mine, it's two things. I've obviously waxed poetically on here about my love of abandoned trails. And I think as I've thought more about it, and the routing, I think what I might actually love most in golf courses is golf courses that really feel like you're not on a walk with your friends, but you're on kind of a hike. And I think part of what that is to me is courses that are routed thoughtfully where you can walk, but courses where I think it's sort of that feeling of can be done different ways, but sort of that down and back feeling. For example, I think that the opening tee shot at Sheep Ranch is one of the coolest opening shots in golf, kind of going down on that par 5. But other than maybe 11 at Sheep Ranch, where you kind of go back up the hill, it's all just kind of flat. So it's we got to get you out there. It's going to be this cool hole, and then it's kind of flat. Where I really liked how number 1 very clearly sends you down the hill, and then you kind of play by the ocean, and then you very much make your way back into the woods. But it's very subtle. It's not we're just going to have this massive straight uphill par 5. It's very kind of subtle. But as you kind of think back to the routing, it very kind of thoughtfully moves you up and around. And even though it's very different than abandoned trails and kind of, firm and, core Crenshaw and found bunkers, that is not what this is at all. But it, to me, very kind of much resonates with that, kind of a hike with your friends. We're on a hike in Monterey as opposed to a hike in Bandon, Oregon. So I think that really resonates. And the other thing which is funny is having just played Lido, I think that there's sort of this mystery around, these template holes, right? It's oh my God, it's called Ocean. And, and again, I don't even know what some of these mean. My favorite hole at Lido was the Lagoon. But is that because there's a million bunkers and supposed to be water in a lagoon? I actually don't know why it's called Lagoon. That was just my favorite hole, and I'm still trying to work that out. But one thing I really liked is, and Dom, you can add some context, like I kind of put together as we're going down there that Spyglass Hill's logo is a pirate. And realizing, through talking to locals and Dom doing some research, that the connection is to Robert Louis Stevenson, who lived in the area. And like normally I would think that like the whole names being after like characters in like a fake kids book about pirates would be like hokey and stupid. Like if you know me at all, that's something I would like roast and like make fun of pretty openly. But I thought it was like actually charming the longer we've done that. Like actually right here I have a copy of like Treasure Island that I want to read. I don't know. Like I found the totally fake connection. I mean, it's authentic, I guess, but like I don't know. I just thought like the fact that it was like I think fog obviously is like spooky. That's what Neil from No Laying Up calls it. And we had a very like spooky round. And I think about some of those like we'll post the some of the videos, but like number one with the fog just kind of pumping, or like I think about like 17 where it's like the fog was so thick, but like the sun was out and like it was like super bright, but we couldn't see anything. And it just this weird connection to like it felt like piracy. It felt like authentic. I don't know. I can't really articulate it better than that. But I think that like there was like a mythology, it felt like, around kind of that round and like the golf course that is again entirely manufactured, but actually like really works for me. And that's part of it. Like it's a great logo. I like the pirate connection. Because Dom, you can give some context. I think you said it was supposed to be called Pebble Beach Pines, which also kind of rules as a name. But I actually found the connection to pirates and Robert Louis Stevenson and Treasure Island to like totally work for me in a way that is completely opposite to my like ethos. I think of how I think about the world. Where I just love roasting that kind of shit. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah. The owner of Pebble Beach basically nixed it. He told Robert Trent Jones, was like, no, we're not naming something like my crown jewel. And I'm very grateful that it's a great golf course, because I think it would be a gimmick and it probably would be made fun of if it wasn't. So they got a little lucky in that sense. But, it does feel like it was meant to be, which is really cool. Like you said, the spookiness of it, like, a ship coming into the harbor, but you can't see. And it's kind of like us, like there's fog in front of you. You don't know when you're going to hit the beach or hit land. And all of a sudden it just appears before you. And I don't know why, maybe it was fate or whatever have it, but it just worked really well with that land, that property, and the idea of the golf course. Because there's a very thin line for a resort course to be, named after characters of a book, and it could go south really quick, or it could work really well. I think it works really well.
I thought the fog was very comforting. I thought the round was very comforting. I think it was a mixture of the company, a mixture of the jazz music that was blasting. And, I had a very, very nice full belly of an incredible breakfast sandwich, as Ashton mentioned. Overall, I think I was just comfortable at Spyglass Hill. And it's not... And I think a lot of that has to do with having a caddy as well to kind of direct you and help you out. So I don't know, that round will stick with me for a very long time. And I can't wait to do it again with you guys.
Hey.
Hopefully the pencil works. Hopefully the pencil and day works. So
Yeah, we're hoping to go back in January to run it back. Any other takes or kind of high level thoughts? I mean, I think we can maybe do favorite hole, kind of least favorite hole, and get out of here. But any other high level thoughts people want to share? No. The only thing I want to say is like
I think
Oh, go ahead, Alex. I've been talking too much.
I was going to say I think we should move on to the favorite hole, but go for it.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is like I think the other compliment to the course as well is like that kind of style of like thick, like wet, thick rough. Like I don't like love Presidio. Like I don't like love Harding. Like I play them and I enjoy them, and I'm very grateful that the city of San Francisco has them. Not my favorite kind of golf. I'm much more of, you can play like a sandbag, like, width and angles and firmness and run out, and like that's much more the kind of golf that I like. But I think it's a huge compliment to Spyglass Hill that, like, even though that golf course is sort of the antithesis of the kind of golf that I like to play and golf I travel for. Dom, I think you said it best. Like, it's a place I keep thinking about. Like, seriously, like it's a completely different style of golf than I prefer, and I'm like, I just can't wait to get back out there. There's just so many holes I can't wait to see, and it's just a massive kudos. Also, it's the other thing I just want to hand up, and hopefully this will resonate with you guys too. I have no idea about the style difference of like senior versus RTJ. Like, I don't know the difference, and I'm not gonna act like I do, because I think I was like, oh, it's RTJ, and you're like, oh, it's senior. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, I think senior is supposed to be better than junior. I don't know. I'm just acknowledging that I don't really know the difference of the Jones family and what that means for golf courses. So that's it. Okay.
I think what helped a lot too during our rounds was we were first off, so it was nice to not have anybody in front of us, and it was nice to get the assurance from the group behind us was keeping up with us. I don't feel like we were playing slow. That round I think was a total of like 4 hours and 25 minutes. I think when we got to 18 and last ball was in the cup, so that was nice also to be going into the fog spooky as the first group.
Yeah, very much so. Alex, do you want to lead us off with your favorite hole and why?
Sure. If we were on a clear day, my favorite hole at Spy is still number 4. With how gimmicky it is, I still love the bacon strip. I still love how difficult that green complex is. I love how that hole plays because I feel like you can play it a couple of different ways. One is you can take driver and lay it up in the rough and then try and trust your short game to be good enough to get on that bacon strip to play the hole well, or you could play the way that I did that day, which was you take 5 wood and you hit it about 220 yards into the fairway, which is a nice size fairway when it's on a clear day. You keep yourself out of trouble that way, and you hit a full wedge to that bacon strip. If you want my opinion on my favorite hole that day, number 11. Number 11 is a par 5 that is probably the most gettable at Spyglass. That's the one where there's probably about 60 million bunkers in front of the green, and they're all deep. And if you hit a really good drive, you can get... That's the most attackable par 5 on that course, and it's just kind of fun to see how people play it. Dogleg right, slight dogleg right with trees on the right-hand side guarding the corner a little bit, and you can still hit it. You can still hit a draw and it be forgiving, but you would have to likely lay up from there to then play that hole better. I didn't play that hole specifically well that day, but that was kind of fun to see all 3 of you play that hole, because I mean my best shot that day was on 13 from 4 on not having a great drive, and then having to hit a 3-wood onto the green to try and shift the momentum of the match was awesome. So, and getting a compliment from Nick the caddy was great.
And shift the momentum you did. That was like the plant the flag. Like I made birdie, you made a 4 for 3. Of course, you should have done that on the same hole, but that definitely kind of flipped the momentum. Huss, favorite hole?
16. I mentioned it earlier. It requires you to hit a fade or a left to right ball. Sorry, Ashton. A left to right ball.
A fade would not be good for me. It would go directly.
No, you kind of hit a fade on your drive, but yeah, 469 yard par 4 with a tree in the middle of the fairway, but it's kind of on the right hand side. So, when our caddy Nick told us to hit the ball and let it land right where he was basically standing in front of the tree. And it was a little weird that he wanted us to land the ball right in front or in line with that tree. But I really like that hole. It requires you to hit a really difficult shot And then, your approach is long as well, into a kind of a tricky green as well. So I really enjoyed 16. I also parred it, and I think that kind of helped us in the match a little bit. But yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Cool. Dom?
Yeah, I would say number one lives up to its expectations. I know we didn't have, again, we're, talking about the fog again, but we didn't have the experience of hitting our drive and then walking around the corner and then just seeing everything out in front of us. But we could see the hole, and I really appreciated the bunkering around the green there. And it protected it, one, from going for it, and two, like the depth it gives you on that shot and relative to the rest of the property like that you're looking at, I just thought it was really cool. And the jazz music, really elevated that experience for me, to be honest. So I will just never forget, one, because I, pretty much top hooked my first tee shot of the day off of one. I won't forget those first, 20, 30 minutes. But I do think that one is as good of a hole as advertised. Close behind that, I think, is 17. Not to steal Ashton's thunder, I'll let him talk about that. But two very, very different golf holes. But I think those were my favorite.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna go a different route because, yeah, I mean, I love 17, but I think 17 is a golf hole that can exist, probably does exist many other places. Just not a drivable, but a demanding shot. If you hit a good drive, you got 50 yards in. Like Alex said, that's another compliment to Spyglass. There's certain times where it's telling you to do a very specific thing, but there's plenty of holes where you have a lot of options. That hole you can hit literally anything you want off the tee, pretty much. And maybe should have, because I didn't exactly stuff my 50-degree wedge. I think for me it was 2. I think that it's cool that we had seen some YouTube content before. I think that it's really cool that they have 2 teeing grounds that they kind of rotate. I think that's fun. We played what I would describe as from what I've seen online, the less challenging one. I think the one on the left is it feels like you're hitting it out of a chute, which, after an opening par 5, kind of, I would even call one comfy. I guess it's hard to know because we couldn't see. But I feel like, giving you a 5-iron hitting out of a chute on number 2 is asking a very specific question. But I think what I appreciated it more is actually that I hit a really bad 5-iron because I just hit a big block and everyone's like, Nick's like, oh, you're fine. Fine meaning you're in play. But then I had a 8-iron way above my feet, super thick rough, to a flag that looked like it was 200 yards away, to a green that I knew was very challenging, bunkers all over it. And so I kind of appreciate the 1-2 punch of, opening par 5, which if you hit a good tee shot is gettable, you can make a 5. But then the next hole is cool, we're going to go 5-iron, 8-iron, and you're very much rewarded. I watched you guys, Hussey, you, and I think Dominic, you guys both hit it on the right side, the appropriate side, and your little wedge from the right side looked a lot more comfortable than my 8-iron with my way above my feet. And I think that's also going back to the hiking idea, right? It's okay, we just went down this ski slope on one, now we're going to kind of hike back up the hill, and we're going to get your first kind of, arguably, we didn't see it, but arguably the best vantage point of the ocean. So I think that 2 is great. And that's something I think about too, that they talk about, I think the Fried Egg guys have talked about, is thinking about how sometimes great holes gets, those early holes get skipped over. I forgot the example. I think it's maybe not 3 at Trails, but just thinking most people aren't going to be oh, my favorite hole was the second one. When do people say that? Not often, right? So I think it's just kind of cool to have a really good hole be the second hole of the day, and realizing that that's totally fine. So I think 2, but yeah, definitely loved 17. I think the fact that it was incredibly spooky and bright, and I was Captain Cook, and I'm this rules. I why is it Captain Cook? That's awesome. But really love 2. And yeah, definitely want to play 4 when I can see it, because that definitely is a bit of a letdown. Does anybody have a super hot take on, or a strong opinion on worst hole? Hussey, I love that you kind of zigged away from 18, but is there any holes that you kind of look back and you're like, nah, that was fine?
I want to agree with Huss that I feel like the par threes at Spy are very underwhelming. They, to a certain extent, are all the same. Number 3 is that's their picturesque hole. I get it, but it's a downhill par 3 that's less than 160 yards, pretty much from any tee box. And that is the same when it comes to 12. It's the same when it comes to the second one. I think that's 15. Sure, I think that it helps that they're on the back 9 par 3s that there's water, but there's only really there's only one way to play those holes, and if you hit in the water, it ruins that experience for those par 3s. Or you could do exactly what I did on 12, and we will not say it on this podcast, but that's definitely not the way to play the hole. So, yeah, the number 5 is the other par 3, which is much longer, and it's probably the most memorable par 3 on Spy. But yeah, the par 3s on the back 9 are not very memorable or fun.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any like bad holes out there, and I think that's I think we could probably all agree on there's no real bad holes. But I've heard chatter about this, and I'm curious what you guys think. What if they flip the 9s? What if you had those seaside holes at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then you go back in. And then you have a little bit of a crescendo at the beginning, or at the end. As opposed to, in theory, the crescendo without any fog is kind of at the beginning.
I think Jonathan talked about that, right? He mentioned that, I think.
Maybe.
I'm curious what Dom thinks on that. I want to lead with Dom on that one. I'm curious what your thoughts are for if you would have flipped the 9s for Spy. Sorry, I gotta put you on the spot real fast.
My take is... No, I'm ready. My take is that the ending would be just as bad. Like, I was going to give 18 a break and say it wasn't my least favorite hole, but then I was like, well, do I pick 8 or 9? Because I think those 3 are they don't punch for their weight. And so if you flip the 9s, like, yeah, I think that'd be great, but 9 would stink just as much as 18 does. Not because it's a bad hole, but just because it's not memorable. I think you get a little lulled to sleep on 8 and 9, and then it kind of picks back up on 10, because I think 10's great. I think that'd be a fun opening hole, but people would really struggle. That's a pretty tight window to tee off to, first thing in the morning especially. And I really liked 11. I think that's, even though it's not gettable, I lost $5 on that hole to our caddy because I said, you want to play closest to the pin, and I completely hit it probably about 15 yards short into the big bunkers. So I lost $5 on that one, and Nick didn't take a swing all day and put it to like 15 feet. So shout out to Nick on that one. So to answer your question, Hussey, like, I can see it, but it's just a shame that the end of the front 9 is not very memorable, and it would probably suffer in that regard.
Yeah,
those are definitely the two transition holes. Those are definitely the two transition holes on that you really feel it. 7 is that par 5 before where you've got water on the left hand side with the green, and then 8 is not even really a dog leg that bad to the left, and massive side hill down from left to right, and is just back up the hill. But those two definitely feel like the transition, and I agree with you. 10's amazing. It's a lot of fun. Different ways to play that hole. Take driver, you have a nice little flip wedge in on a tight window, or you could take a shorter club and it's a little bit farther away, but your window shrinks on your second shot through the tree, kind of through that goalpost almost.
Wait, do you guys not like 8? I thought 8 was a good hole. I mean, it was like you kind of had to hit hit a right to left shot in order to have a good spot in the fairway. And that green is pretty tricky.
I have no problems with 8. With 8.
It's just 9 being
it's definitely. 9 is definitely like, it's not my favorite hole. Do I not care for it? No, I like 9 because of how wide that fairway is. So that's definitely one of the more forgiving tee shots. But that green complex on 9 is really hard. A lot of bunkers guard it, a lot of tiers throughout the entirety of that complex, and then 8's hard just because it slopes very severely back to front and with a bunker guarding it, so it just doesn't feel very attackable, even if you hit a good drive.
Yeah, and 9 is really hard because there's also a marshal just waiting there for you and watching you the entire time. And you don't know if he's going to get on your ass or tell you to have a great day and, give you a lift like your Princess Peach coming out of the, the halfway house like Mr. Damo was with. So,
it was a long
It was
walk.
a long
They really
walk.
didn't do that.
You're right. But, just something to think about. It would be cool to play it reversed. Or not reversed, but, flip 9.
The funny thing with that
Can we do
question
that in
asked to me-
January? Can we ask?
What do you say?
I said, can we do that in January? Can we call ahead far enough in advance, ask them to play it backwards?
That would
like,
be
who are
fun.
you?
Hey, we want to be
Like-
first tee time off, and then we'll focus. Yeah, we want to be first tee time off on the back.
It's like, I'm Alex Long. Can we play it backwards? I don't know. I think the funny thing is, like, what that
Maybe we can
exercise
have
really
help.
does to me is it really just, it sounds like a stupid thing to say at the end of an hour-long podcast, but it reminds me of just how, like, good the golf course is, because I was about to say that I think the back 9 might be better than the front 9 as far as, like, holes. And I don't know that that's true, but, like, it might be true.
I want
Right.
to be in that boat with you. I think that the back 9 is actually better than the front 9 at Spy. I think that it's
Which is crazy, though, right? Because, like, the
much
first
more
five, in
of
fact,
a-
the first 5 holes is on the
Yeah.
water, but the holes might be better on the back 9. Like, that's crazy.
there's a lot more ways I feel like you can play the back 9 than you can the front. I just feel like the front is somewhat more one-dimensional on certain holes, whereas the back you can play it a lot differently in a lot of different ways. You could play 16 by taking 3-wood. You could take driver and be really aggressive if you can hit a left-to-right shot. You can play 17 a lot of different ways. You could take an iron off the tee and then have a full another second shot into it, or you can take driver like a lot of us did and then have foot wedges into it, or even half wedges into it. So there's definitely a lot more ways I feel like you can play the back 9 than you can the front. So I think that's why I think that it's a better back 9 than a better front 9.
And even though it's worth noting, even though, like, I don't think any of us are big, like, artificial ponds guys, I think the other problem was, like, 12, for example, they were literally redoing the liner of the pond. So, like, I know that's what every pond looks like, but, like, it really looked horrible because they were redoing it. So I think it's one of those that, like, if you can sort of, like, close your eyes and, like, suspend reality, you can enjoy a pond on a par 3, right? Like, it's man-made. It's kind of hard to do that when, like, you could see, like, it just looked really bad. So I think that was part of it too. But yeah, I mean, I think that's what the exercise really comes down to. And honestly, now that I'm saying it, I think no, because I think that you would not have as much anticipation if it was 10. Like, if it was the last 5 holes, yes. But I think that, like, you wouldn't have the anticipation. Because, like, for me, it was like you're on the range. You're not trying to put pressure on yourself. Hussey, it's like, I thought it was the other day. You called in a shotgun start, like, 3 years ago. I think it was this round that's on my wall. And are like, when I'm playing, this is me, Hussey, Jack, and JD at Pasa. You're like, how do I have fun and, like, try to remove expectations when I'm playing, like, a bucket list golf course with my close friends? And there's something about, like, I actually feel the way at Pasa. It's like 10's an amazing hole at Pasa, but there's something about, like, you're up at Pasa, you can kind of see the ocean, and like, it's that same feeling of, like, you're going down this, you're going down, right? And there's something about, like, you're warming up on the range and you're getting your coffee, but they're like, you can't go till 6:40, but, like, at 6:40 that, like, these first 5 holes are gonna bang, right? And I think like as great as I thought that like I'm saying 10, 11, 12, the whole back nine is, the first tee shot on, if you flip the nines, it's like, okay, it's like a dog leg down to the left. And like, we'll get to the super cool hole, but I think the anticipation of the fact of like you kind of like want to play well in those first 5 holes actually kind of makes it more fun, right? Like you want to like peak early because of those holes, right? Which means you put pressure on yourself, which means you might not actually do it, and I think that's actually kind of fun. So it's a fun thought exercise, but I think you'll leave it alone.
I think it serves its purpose as a really good match play or championship course. Like I would be pretty nervous heading into those last 3 and 4 holes, like in a match or in a stroke play tournament, because I think they'd be really difficult to overcome. Like, 16, you could easily double that and lose the hole. 17, then you're faced with a 50-yard pitch shot, like with a match is tied, like you could duff it, you could thin it, you could do whatever, and then 18's not easy at all. So I think in that sense, like, get the resort out of the way, you have your fun, you kind of go back and forth on the front nine, but then when you hit the back, it's like, it's time to play golf. And so if there's any competitive players out there that really want to test and have a good match, like, I think Spyglass is a perfect example of a really, really good match play course, or a tournament course that I know the NCGA hosts a lot of those for winners of certain qualifiers and such. Like, that'd be a really, really hard course to play, 2 days in a row and really show up.
If Hussey and I didn't shoot 80 and we qualified into our event, we were going to play at Spy. And like, yeah, like having played that, like, I think we would have been really fucking nervous on that first hole if we had qualified for that.
That would have been so sick.
Yeah.
But anyways,
maybe next year.
I think we could talk about this. We could talk about this for hours, because I actually think 7, 8, 9 is a better closing stretch of holes than 16, 17, 18. But that's just me, and that's okay.
But that's a compliment to the golf course, right? The fact that like there can be competing opinions. Yeah. I guess last question before we get out of here. At full rack rate, which I believe is 485, is that right, Alex? 485. People are just coming in.
I think it's somewhere within that, in that ballpark, either 485 or 495 or something like that. So
okay, so if it's at full rack rate, Spyglass or Poppy. For NCGA, we should say, like, if you're out of town, you should just play Spy because you're completely fucked. Poppy's a great golf course. Poppy's like 300 if you just book a tee time in a local.
Really? Oh my!
No way!
Alex, can you check that for me, Alex?
I think so.
Yeah,
absolutely.
If you're not, it depends. If like when Nick comes in from San Diego, because he's with an NCGA member, he gets the same rate. But if you are not playing with, like, if I live in Michigan and I just book a tee time at Poppy, I believe it's $300.
That's
it's actually
incredible.
more. It's $350. Non-member of an NCGA is $350 at Poppy.
That's
you play
fucking
Spyglass.
wild.
You pay Spyglass.
I wouldn't even.
That's stupid.
Okay, but that wasn't the question, because I think we all agree. For us, as NCGA members, it's $120. $120 versus $495, but I think we all agree that Spy's a better golf course. What do you do?
I play Poppy Hills more. I'd rather play Poppy Hills 3 times than Spyglass once.
Okay.
It's just maybe because I'm a cheap ass. I don't know.
I'd rather play. I'd do the opposite. I'd rather play Spyglass once than Poppy 3 times.
Yeah.
This is just the planner in me. I'd play Poppy more just because it's more accessible. I'm looking at Spy right now. There's not a free day available for like 3 weeks. So you trying to like book something even as a Dukes Club member at Spy is it can be hard. Like, you have to be really flexible if you want to play Spy. And I feel like it's harder to get on.
But let's say they say, hey, Alex, you can have 12 o'clock tea time on Saturday, either one, doesn't matter, to get your planner. What do? Do you play
Then I
Spy
played
once
Spy.
or Pebble? Okay.
Then I played Spy. Yeah. I'd played Spy once. I love Poppy, but I played Spy once. My mind changed after that round, even though it was in the fog. There's just a little bit more fun playability for me at Spy than there is at Poppy. And Poppy's a great course. And it's unbelievable value for us as an NCGA member.
Unnecessary hipster take is I think it's Poppy if you play from the back tees. I think Poppy's a better golf course from the back tees. With, again, there's people in my DMs like, you're a 4 handicap, you hit it a long way, fuck you. I get it, I understand. But I think that like there are certain shots that like from playing it back for the first time I was like, really? Like the par 3s at Poppy are like exponentially better than at Spy, I think. I think the par 5s are like pretty close. I think the par 5s are like pretty close. But I think the par 4s at Spyglass are like noticeably better.
Okay.
The only par 3 that's better at Poppy than at Spy is number 11.
Oh god, that really?
Everything else, I think Spyglass has better par 3s.
No, 17
they all
is
like
great.
they all feel the same. Like you could.
I was gonna say, well,
Right?
I think 15 like melted my brain
17,
this time.
15?
15 is good.
We're gonna have to fight.
17
We're gonna fight,
is-
Dom.
It's just a par 3.
This pod's gonna be 2
And
hours
2
now.
is
We've opened up a
obviously
whole
just a
can of
par 3.
worms.
No. No way.
It's just a guy. It's they're Jordan Spieth par 3s. They're just par 3s.
Oh my
The
god.
number 11 is fun.
11 is fun. 15, you're right, is not perfect, but it could be really good if they shaved down and got it a little firmer. And then you could really play it like a bump and run Redan style.
Yeah.
And then 17 is just so difficult because it's, you know, you hit your you hit your little queefy, you know, ball out to the right, you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed, and that's what I did. I will 100% disagree with you, Dom. I think the par 3s at Poppy are better, but
100%, not 99%.
a follow-up to this is, what if both of those courses were in the same forest, no ocean holes, and they were this exact same price?
So you're
Where
saying
would
like,
you
if you were to take 1 through 5 and put it in the forest?
Yeah, let's just say they were
to
surrounded-
compare it to Poppy.
Yeah, surrounded by trees. Like, and they're the same
That's
price.
really hard to imagine.
It's a really hard one, right? It's like, and the pros don't play either.
I think
you know,
I
the pros
think
don't play.
the answer is Poppy. I actually think the answer is Poppy.
I would still choose Spy.
I think it's
like the par
50-50.
4s at Spy much more than I like the par 4s at Poppy. Yeah, you could give it or take. I would love to see how they would do those first 5 holes in the woods. I think that 2 would be so much different to play if you couldn't miss left or right in the woods. Because you can miss left and right and 2 at Spyglass and you're in the sand and you can still technically play it. But I feel like those holes would be so different for those first 5.
I think it's like we were saying earlier.
The par 4s at Spy.
I think what this is it's just a reminder that like Poppy is a great course we should play more. Like that's actually the answer. This is because this is like, I say this affectionately, this is stupid. Like I opened this can of worms, but like I think it's a reminder. Like I said, I had my mind blown by Spy, but I walked away. Every time I walk away from Poppy, I feel really grateful that we get to play that pace for 120 regular, 90 Twilight. Like that's a 350 is insane. Like that's crazy. But like Poppy is an amazing golf course.
Does your answer change, Ashton, because of the Dukes Club membership? And to give people context, the Dukes Club membership was $285 for us to play Spyglass. And that's walking rate. It's exorbitant, in my opinion, of how much Pebble Beach costs for a cart. It's $55 a person. And Spyglass is cart path only. So it's almost better to walk Spy than it is to take a powered cart. but I'm curious if you feel like your answer changes because of the Dukes Club membership.
I mean, I think that Spy at 285, like I said, is like, I think to me it's like Pasa, or maybe, yeah. Like, I think Pasa if you're paying full rack rate, is like, for us living where we live, if they're going to keep it there post renovation, please do. It's like required to play once a year, right? And kind of in that same math, I think it's similar. I think that, like, especially if we're going to we've talked about, we'll kind of rotate the Dukes Club membership amongst us to kind of spread that cost out over 4 years amongst the four of us. I think Spy's like twice a year. Yeah, I think it's definitely different, because I think that I think that Spy is probably, even as much as I love Poppy, I think that Spy is probably more than twice as good as Poppy, if that makes sense, purely from an economical standpoint to me. Like, Poppy's special, but Spy has a different. It's just different. It's not 500 different, but it's 285 different. Do you not agree, Huss? A lot of skepticism.
I'm literally thinking, like, right now, as we're like, the par threes and the par fives at Poppy are better than at Spyglass. I think the par fives at Poppy are world class. Like, they're so good and so difficult, and they're so unique too. 9, 18. What's that one on the front? What's the other one? 4 or 5 or whatever it is. I mean, those are so different. Yeah. So, anyways, just 10 at Poppy is okay. I mean, it's pretty good.
Oh, honestly, I love 10. I think that tee shot is so challenging.
Yeah, put it in the bunker. Hey.
Yeah, I mean that's
the
thing with Poppy.
Are I feel like the par fives at Poppy are a little bit more attackable overall. It's so hard to attack the par fives at Spy. I just feel like, due to length and to how you have to play the holes. Does that make them better? Maybe. I think that's very opinionate. That's just opinion based. Because I'm in the opposite boat on that one. I think that the par fives at Spy are better than at Poppy.
I mean, the par fives at Spy, like, if we played them at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they would have been gettable. You know, they weren't gettable because it was 6:40 in the morning and it was heavy fog. Like, I landed in the middle of the fairway, but I was like, it would have rolled even further. And I just feel like it could have been a whole lot different if we're playing both courses at the same time. But I don't know. I mean, I
can't argue with you on that one. I can't argue with you on that specific parameter. I just, like, if we're sticking on one's fairway, even though you guys can get to see it, is really skinny actually. When you get past 250, you're going from a 50-yard wide fairway down to a 30-yard wide fairway for Spy, I feel like. And then also, you've got 30 yards of rough before you hit the bunkers, and every single part of that green is guarded by a bunker on number 1. And that's the same with 11. Whereas that's a very wide fairway, probably the most gettable par 5 at Spy, but you have this massive bunkering complex on the right-hand side of the green, short of it, and all of it's probably around 15 yards downhill, going back up the hill, and trying to hit the 30-yard bunker shot up the hill onto a green complex that's kind of a gun shake complex. It's hard. So
I think the bottom line is, if you have a friend that's a Dukes Club member and you're not from around, let's say you live where Hussey lives and you're not too familiar, like, the best day or 2 days of golf you could do are what we did for those rates. And don't go anywhere near Pacific Grove to try and top it off. So I think just go to those 2 courses, pay $80 and $285. Maybe not necessarily get a caddy, but, like, for your money, to pay under $500 to play those 2 golf courses is an absolute steal. And I would do that for anybody that came out here for a golf trip. Like, I don't know how you can, it's like those things on Twitter, Instagram, you see, like, build your best NBA team for like $50. Like, your 2 best rounds of golf for under $400. Like, I think if you can get those discounts and such, like, I would do that.
Yeah. That's a good way to think about it for under $500, and also I think what's interesting is, like, this is we do a whole separate podcast on this. Like, having just talked about like I played like Sedge Valley and Lido on the same day. Like Sedge Valley is like 5,800 yards, a bunch of half par holes, and Lido's like the hardest golf course I'll probably ever play. Like, it's one of those days where it's like total whiplash, right? Like, the morning is nothing like the afternoon. There's something interesting. I mean, because again, I'm about to fuck up. Is it the same architect? No, it's senior and junior. Like, those two courses feel, there's like a common through line that you can see, but they're different, right? It's like Poppy's got like the sand to it, like but you can tell there's similarities, and I think that's kind of interesting, right? Where it's like, you know, hey, like fish is going to be the main entree tonight, but like tonight we're going to go like, you know, Mexican flavors over here, and then tomorrow we're going to go to like Southeast Asia, right? We're still using rockfish as the primary entree, but like the flavor profiles are going to be pretty different. And I think we're actually arguing, do you prefer South Asian food or Mexican food? No wrong answers there either, right? Don't know why I made that comparison, but that's just where my brain is at. You're all giving me a look like I'm an idiot, which can confirm.
No, I'm I think that's a fun one to think about. And I think it's good that we're having these discussions on which one we prefer, because it just shows how good, and to echo off Dom, it just shows how good both those courses are. Sure, there's different price points for the both of them, and we were able to capitalize on discounts for organizations and people that we know, but it's nice to be able to kind of put them in either their own tier or in the same tier, and have conversations about it.
Yeah. And honestly, one of the best things is, you know, get yourself, we miss you terribly, Huss, but get yourself a friend to move to Slow. So when Hussey moved, we're like, I guess we got to meet in Monterey. And so, like, I guess we got to meet in Monterey, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Hey, can I hijack this really quick?
Oh, please.
Do you guys want some dessert?
Yeah. I just
What do
love
you
that we
guys
were
think
done
of
at
the
like 50, and now we're still, oh my God. I was wondering if you were going to go here.
What do you guys think of the hay?
The
It's not
toughest
worth the
par
money.
3 course I've ever played.
The putting course is so much more fun than the actual par 3 course.
You're getting choppy. I think that's the internet's way of being like, it's like we're getting censored by Pebble Beach properties. So what were,
Sorry.
It's all good. So you're saying, Hussey, you want to?
I just do not like the hay. I do not like the hay. I don't ever really want to ever play it again.
I wonder why.
And I don't like it because there's lawsuits waiting to happen at the hay. You are going to kill a little child if you go and play there often. It's not worth your time. Please, please, please stop playing the hay if you're an adult that is good at golf. It's only for people who are bad at golf. And they need to fix it to allow you to hit putter off of all the tee boxes. Please. That is it. No thanks.
But you should go for lunch, and you should have an 18-hole putting match.
Yes, 100%.
So if you don't play, definitely at least do that, and have a good old time, because that was very, very enjoyable. Alex gained a new nickname from me that day that I can't wait to use the next time we play. Thor. If he starts hitting the ball 5 feet past.
Unfortunately, a lot of nicknames for you that weekend. Oh, well, Huss, basically what you did is like, just there is like, you know, we're done with dinner and like we're thinking about tea or coffee, and you're like, hey, I brought cake for myself. I'm gonna eat it all, and fuck you guys. But I don't disagree. And if we want to have another 3-hour podcast, like do hole-in-ones count at the hay? That's a whole separate discussion.
Whoa. But I forgot to add that, Alex, I appreciate you extending your vouchers. Oh, wait. No, didn't Dom kind of like schmooze the dude? So you didn't have to use any of your vouchers?
We got it.
Dom did
We got it for free.
Correct, yeah.
Dom, you the man.
Oh, well, it's just good karma for our boy. Alex, so you can save up and use it another time. It's
Yeah,
for your
I'm sure you
generosity
can't wait
host
to
us in
do
the
that
first
after
place.
we just absolutely like defecated all over. Hey, Alex, we're gonna go play this place that fucking sucks. What did you say last year? Like Tiger Woods should be fucking disgraced or something?
Yeah, he should be.
I will say it is fun taking like. I will say it is fun taking good golfers to the hay, because I did that with another group that when we played Spanish. We played the hay in the morning, and it was kind of fun to warm up on 9 holes when it wasn't very busy. But it was fun taking like 2 handicaps to the hay and just saying like, this is so much harder than anything else that I've ever played. You're hitting like 60 to 80 yard shots with there's bunkers, but it's just the trouble is the other people around it. You gotta be on your toes. So it is kind of fun to take good people to take good golfers to the hay and see how they play it, because they don't know what to expect. They think, oh, short par 3 course, 60, 70 yard shots. I should just demolish this. I should be able to hit like these like 2 feet from the pin, and they just like see it roll past, and it's just like, oh my god, this is so much harder than I thought. So that's the one thing that it is fun about the hay for me. Is it terrible by itself? Terrible to play it by yourself. Terrible to play it with anybody else. They really need to make those mats a lot softer for golfers that are good, because you feel like your wrist is going to get demolished by the end of it. But it is kind of a fun, like, the green complexes are fun. That's about it. And it is fun to see people get their expectations completely murdered.
Yeah, if you like to experience Schadenfreude, you need to take people to the hay for the first time, because they're not going to enjoy it, and they'll kind of melt apart. And you can just sit there being like, I'm enjoying this right now. I'm enjoying watching, Chris Hussey fucking fall apart and yell at Tiger Woods and not know how to hit a 50-yard shot and bump and run a wedge. Like, it makes no sense out there. That place is terrible.
The mats make it, like, it's really hard to hit, like, an open-faced, like, spinner or feel shot off those mats. But I don't know. I think that, like, what I'm really hearing, kind of Alex's day, he said, someone's like, hey, Hussey's ideal golf day, the hay in Spanish Bay. Like, that is what his 2 favorite courses in the world. Like, nothing would make him happier than the hay in Spanish Bay. Oh, then maybe go get some wine at Pebble Beach, where they're like, oh, this is a red, $40 a glass. And Hussey's like, this is a fucking disgrace. So
He'll be a better golfer for it eventually. You can't not play those 2. Having you 2 describe, Spanish, there's no way you could be a worse golfer. You might quit, but you'll either quit or you'll get a lot better from playing the hay in Spanish all the time.
No, I disagree.
Well, here's the deal.
Huss and I have the exact opposite opinions on stuff. I really actually like Spanish. I know he hates Spanish, and then he thinks that Poppy's better than Spyglass. So this is definitely the Huss and I are on the opposite ends of the spectrum for today.
I love it.
Well, what we'll do for sure is when the 4 of us, like, I think before they blow up Spanish, we should try to play the 4 of us, and we'll get back on the horn and we'll let Dominic lead, because people might not know this. You haven't seen it tonight. When Dominic decides to turn on the jets, the boy can really get going, and I want Dom like full operational Death Star. Granted, he may love the place, and that'll be a whole separate discussion, but we've also talked about doing a podcast about like Sharp Park, Lincoln Park, PG, things of that nature. We'll leave that alone for here, but yeah, we'll definitely need to pull out the mics again after we play Spanish, and this could get really spicy. But gentlemen, I did not expect this to be 90 minutes. I thought we were done 40 minutes ago, but we started to slice and dice and change the routings and put holes. No, this is, I think, the biggest thing, the whole reason this podcast got started is these are the conversations we want to have anyway. And yeah, I mean, the long story short is I just can't wait to get back and play these 2 courses with you. So thank you all for joining. And yeah, we'll hopefully go back in January, and if it merits another pod, we'll run it back. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashton.